Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laksha Sharma.
And my name's Alicia Castillo.
Today, myself, Jillian, David, and Alicia have the pleasure of presenting 2 awards to recognize the efforts of 2 individuals who made all of this possible.
To our award recipients, please come forward to accept your award and take a photo. If you'd like to share a few words, feel free to do so, and you're more than welcome to step up to the mic.
With that, I'll hand it over to Jillian and David, who will announce our first award.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jillian. The first award we are presenting today is the Advocacy Award. This award is presented to a student in the John D. Odegard School of Aerospace Sciences who has gone above and beyond to support and uplift others within the aviation community. They are a true advocate, using their voice and actions to foster inclusivity and create an environment where others feel welcomed and empowered.
This person exemplifies what it means to be a student leader, and they encourage their peers to pursue their ambitions. They are also a major contributor to the event today. Without them, we would not be where we are right now, and we are proud to announce that this year's Advocacy Award recipient is the president of NGPA and our co-chair, Olivia Farnsworth.
Wow, okay. Thank you all so much. Yeah, I'm honored to receive this award, and I was honored to be able to serve as co-chair this year and obviously president of NGPA. There's so much important work that needs to be done, and I'm honored to have the best of company to do it with. So thank you, and I hope you'll enjoy the rest of our event.
The second award that we will be announcing today is the Legacy Award. This award is dedicated to an individual whose contributions to the aviation industry have left a lasting impact. Their vision, dedication, and achievements have inspired the future generations of aviators. This individual has created their own path after exploring different paths, ultimately finding their place within the aviation industry.
They have demonstrated consistent commitment not only to advance their career, but also support others along the way. They've mentored flight students with patience and expertise, and have also brought a sense of fun and positive that uplifts everyone around them. We are proud to announce that this year's Legacy Award recipient is a current flight instructor at Kansas State University, who also has served as the president of the Papa chapter at United Aviate Academy. Please put your hands together for Carissa Yang.
Wow, this was not actually scripted, so thank you so much. I'm very honored to receive this award. I think it means a lot to be here with faces in the industry, to speak among so many incredible panelists and individuals in our industry who are inspiring the next generation. So thank you all for having me. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak up for our community. And yeah, very excited to be on the panel. Thank you so much.
All right, we have one last panel before the end of the day today. The Beyond the Degree panel features speakers from all over the country. This panel's focus is on the transition from students to the aerospace professional industry, where we see the industry from now as a student perspective and how we can adapt as our careers evolve and expand. At this time, we'd like to introduce our moderators, David Kieran and Alexander Shetty, and the Beyond the Degree panelists to the stage. Please have a seat as David and Alex take us through the panel.
Hey everyone, welcome to our second panel of the day. This is Beyond the Degree. I'm Alex. I'm the Vice President of the Latino Professionals in Aerospace on campus, and I'd like to welcome you.
Hi everyone, I'm David. I'm the Vice President of NGPA, and now if you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
Hello, my name is Carissa Yang. I am a current flight instructor at Kansas State University, and I serve as the collegiate chapter lead for PAPA.
I'm Daniel Stellini. I'm a captain at United Airlines.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Ellickson Andrews, and I'm the executive director of the NGPA.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Samantha Battle. I'm the senior manager of corporate engagement. They just changed my title. Republic Airways.
Good Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Julieta Triana Vasquez. I am a first officer in the 737 for United Airlines, and I also serve as the Central Region Lead for Latino professionals in aerospace.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariah Graham. I'm a first officer with PSA Airlines.
What's up, everyone? My name is Devin Durant. I UND alum from 2022, and now I'm a first officer at Frontier Airlines out of Las Vegas.
And hey guys, I'm also a UND alum of 2022, and I'm currently a first officer with Mesa Airlines.
Awesome. We're so excited to have you all here. So kind of just dive into these questions. So our first question is kind of directed at everyone. So if you'd like to answer, just take the mic. So the first question is, can you describe the transition from student to professional pilot? And for those of you who attended a Part 141 institution, such as UND, can you speak to the similarities between 141 flying and professional flying?
Happy to jump in. So I graduated from United Aviate Academy, and then I currently work at another 141 school, which is Kansas State University. And I haven't transitioned to the airlines yet, but I do think that it's really interesting to see the difference between different 141 schools. You're held to different standards, but you also are held up to the same standards, right? We all receive the same level of training. And I think it's really important that we're creating that culture, that safety culture, the idea that you want to uphold these certain practices and continue to aspire. So I think it really serves you well as you continue to progress in your training, right? To continue looking at the different standards that you're practicing toward, right? So discipline, commitment, and then practicing all of that CRM. I think that's something that you continue to see at both schools, and it translates directly to the airlines, right? Because you're working as a crew from day one.
I had a different path than most people I've talked to. Colombian, born and raised in Bogota. I started flight training in Bogota and then moved to Argentina alone at 18 to get my private pilot's license, and back to Colombia, get commercial, and then to the United States as a private foreign base student and work Part 61 all the way out to my ATP. So my path is a little bit different, but I think certain values that I learned through those transitions helped me develop the skills that I need to become a professional pilot, and those are maintaining my discipline and looking at very being very detail oriented at what every country desires or is looking for in the standardization of their procedures. So I think for what I've heard here at UND, you guys get that chance to experiment some of those things early on in your career that will later translate for whatever path you decide to take. So I think there is, my take would be to appreciate those tools that are offered and just try to take advantage of them when you're here. So when you get into a professional level, the transition will be a lot easier.
I'm similar in the sense that I did not graduate from a 141. I'm Part 61 all the way through my training. So I can't speak to that part, but I can speak to the idea of transitioning from a student to a professional pilot. I like to think of when you're a student, be like a professional, and when you're a professional, be like a student. As a student, do what the professionals do. Brief your taxi, even though you've taxied that same route and it's the same clearance all the time, and talk about the hot spot, even though you've talked about it all the time and you know what it is. Because professionals do that. We brief our taxi every time. When you go on your solo cross country, even though nobody's watching you, fill out your navlog and really do it. Don't just pretend. Don't just push the GPS and just get there and get back. Marinate in that moment there. When you debrief with your instructor. Do a healthy debrief, because as professionals, we always do a debrief after our flight and find something that we can improve upon. And then when you are a professional, be a student again. And by that I mean when you don't know the answer to something, look it up or ask somebody. Find a resource to ask just like you would as a student. And realize that just because you're getting paid for this now as a professional, you still don't know everything. And use your resources that you have in the cockpit as well as outside the cockpit to find the right answers.
Okay, I'll kind of speak on it. Like I'd mentioned, UND alum here, but all the kind of funny things you do 141 where you're like, why are we doing this? Clear left, clear right, and there's no plane or anybody to your left or right. You know, you're sitting there like, why am I doing this? But you still do it. You keep up with those things. And then I think the biggest thing I learned, you know, going into the Frontier program was my first ever type rating is an Airbus A320. I was terrified going to training. But a lot of the practices and the, you know, ritualistic kind of things you do to succeed here at UND in a 141 program can still apply. It's just now, you know, the cadence to everything you learn is the same, like how they teach it here at 141 in that block system of learning things. It's just now the pace picks up, but you can use the same tools to succeed.
So I think we can all agree UND is very regimented and standardized, but all those things you think that are kind of silly or redundant really do come back into play, especially once you get to the airline level. You know, you're going to do that pre-brief, your lesson, and then a debrief. And the airlines are really good about letting you know exactly what you're going to expect once you go into it. And so all the ways that you set up and the habits you build here directly correlate to the airlines. And so I think that's going to be something that's really setting you guys up for success with the 141 lifestyle is, like he said, the pace does pick up, but it's so similar. And with the classes that you went to, and I mean, I remember doing risk management classes and not really thinking anything of it. And you use a little bit of it at training here, but it really comes into play once you start actually working at the airlines. And those things that you think you didn't have to learn, that you subconsciously were paying attention to, you use them every single day in every single flight, just a little bit differently.
Awesome, awesome. So I think something that came up a lot in that discussion was like kind of tools in your toolkit, kind of, hey, what are we doing to get ourselves ahead? And kind of one of the great things about being at a 141 institution like UND is the prevalence of affinity organizations here on campus. So I was wondering, what role do you think affinity organizations like NGPA, LPA, et cetera, play in the careers of aspiring aviators, and kind of what resources have those offered you in your careers?
I'd like to speak to that. So I started flying when I was in high school. I had no idea I could be a pilot. I didn't know anybody who looked like me. I'm from a very small town, a very small state in Delaware, and yeah, nothing really there. And so when I started flying, I had a mentor who was like, you should join this organization called OBAP. It's Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. And when I joined that group, I saw the people that looked like me, and I thought, oh my God, wait a minute, I actually can do this. Which really, really helped. The mentorship really, really helped when you're in an environment where you are one singular person in a room of other people who don't look like you, don't carry themselves like you. It was very difficult when I first started, but organizations like OBAP, organizations like Women in Aviation, organizations like Sisters of the Skies really helped foster and develop my career. Also, I've received scholarships through OBAP. I've received scholarships through Women in Aviation. I've received scholarships through Sisters of the Skies. So not only did they help foster my career from a mentorship aspect, but from a financial aspect as well, which is equally as important.
Yeah, I mean, peer organizations really are all about networking. I would not be where I am without the help of the NGPA. Every job I've had in aviation has all been through networking, whether it was at the NGPA or Women in Aviation. My first job in the industry outside of college was at Republic, actually, and I was at a Women in Aviation conference. A Republic recruiter came up, was talking about how great her team was, and I made a joke that I'd like to be on her team one day, and 6 months later, there I was. And a few years after that, I was at an NGPA conference learning about different opportunities in the industry, and lo and behold, there I was again. So, you know, the purpose of peer organizations is certainly to open doors for underrepresented communities, but really it's like you said earlier, if you can be it, you can see, if you can see it, you can be it. Take advantage of networking opportunities that all the organizations have to offer. And just because you may not be a part of the community of the organization doesn't mean that there's still not value for yourself in that organization. There's a lot that we can all learn from each other, and that's a great place to do that is a Holman and an affinity org.
A common theme you're going to hear from this panel, and obviously leading from the panel this morning, is networking and CRM. And your affinity organizations, you're going to obviously help with networking, but CRM also, right? It was said this morning, you need to know you need to get to know who's next to you in the flight deck, right? So if you don't have empathy and you are not understanding what someone else is going through, then it's going to impact your CRM as well. So just like Justin was saying, even if you're not part of a specific demographic, everyone needs an ally. Especially with what's going on nowadays with even our own lives, it can be hard to say, how am I going to support someone else? And that's where the empathy comes in, because no matter what we're dealing with ourselves, there's always people that are going to need you to stand up for them as well.
Well, I can speak all afternoon here about how great LPA has been for me and for my community, but I would really like to highlight two things. The first one is that LPA and in general other affinity groups, because I am part of Women in Aviation, OBAP, PAPA, all that, part of all of them. I'm nowhere near to be Asian or anything like that, you guys may notice. And some people have that, like, oh, I'm white, why would I join OBAP? Or why would I join LPA? We're having this conversation over the table, and it's not about like, oh, if I am not X, then I cannot participate in those events. LPA, or I think I could speak for the Latino community in general, we're very welcoming. Mi casa es tu casa is a saying that you hear over there, but that we treat it like, we truly live by it. I cannot tell you how many commuters have stayed at my home in Houston when they were in reserve, because mi casa is their home as well. And so, number one, LPA has brought to me not only like great mentors that have been there for the toughest and the greatest times of my career, to cry alongside with me when I think I can't move forward, or to cheer me up. You did it. Look at you, flying to the Caribbean. You're gonna soon fly home to Bogota, where you were born. That is great and has brought me friends for life, people who have given me shelter during the hurricane, give me advice, be with me, for tough times. And also, it has allowed me to shine. Everybody has hours. When you get to the level where you need to be a professional pilot, how many hours do you need? 4,000, 3,000, 1,500, whatever it is, the number. Every single one of you, and every single person that has touched an airplane in this university will have the opportunity to give those numbers. But how do you convince the person who is in the other side that you are a person, like a warm person with emotional intelligence, capable not only of shining on your pilot elements, but also as a person? It is through affinity groups. It is through leadership. So I will invite you, every single one of them that you think that you don't belong, to support our affinity groups, to take an opportunity and show that you are an ally, that you are a person that supports everybody, that supports everybody's skills. And through those affinity groups very early in your career, that's how you develop that. By the time you're hireable at a major, if you have been in these roles, people will be like, that person, I'll write you any letter of recommendation. I'll recommend you, I'll write wonderful things about you because I know you. So don't deny yourselves the opportunity to do so for yourselves and for our community as well.
Awesome, that was so wonderful. I love that you recognized that and talked about that. So kind of keeping that discussion going, networking is a big part of these affinity orgs. So how has networking impacted your career progression, and do you have any tips you'd like to share for successful networking, any of you?
I think networking, I literally wouldn't be here without networking. Avery and I met at Women in Aviation, and she in passing mentioned that she would invite me to speak, and I'm thinking it's a classroom, and next thing you know, I'm sitting here on a panel talking to all of you. So I think when it comes to networking, a very critical component of networking is literally just seeing people, which sounds cliche at first, right? Oh, you see somebody. But one time when I was at OBAP, I was speaking with a pilot from JetBlue, and we had a really great conversation. I saw him later on that day, and I said, "Hey, Chris, it's nice to see you again." And he said, "Oh my God, like you remembered my name. Like the fact that you remembered my name, the fact that you were so kind and so personable." He was like, "I'll write you any letter of recommendation you want. I want you at JetBlue, but if you don't come to JetBlue, I want you to be successful in other places," right? So the fact that when you network somebody, when you see them, when you connect with them, I mean, networking got me at Embry-Riddle, which I come in peace, I know. I know, but I do come in peace. But networking got me at Embry-Riddle. From Embry-Riddle, I became a PSA cadet. I met Ted. Ted and I have known each other for, I mean, at least 8 years. Networking got me an OBAP. It got me scholarships. It got me all of these things, right? And it's literally just the fact that you see people, you interact with people. Just like Julieta said, you're not afraid to get in the thick of it with people and sit with them and be with them and support them. Like, that is what networking is about. When we look at how we evolved as human beings, we evolved in villages, we evolved in tribes. We started out, we all lived together in close-knit communities, and we helped each other. And that's what life is about. It's about helping each other. And so that's all networking is. It's about seeing people, it's about recognizing people, it's about helping, and it's about getting back to the roots of who we are as individuals and human beings, which I think we may have lost a little bit along the way. So
we're going to talk about imposter syndrome a little bit. Is anyone raise your hand if you know what imposter syndrome is? Right? It's when you don't feel like you don't belong, especially if you are a minority, or even if you're not a minority, sometimes you just feel like, I don't know why I'm here in this room. And networking is hard. You know, we're all going to keep telling you network, but it's not easy. So I would just say set a goal for yourself. If you're not comfortable networking and you're going to walk into a room of professionals or even other students, you don't have to meet everyone in that room. Just set yourself a goal. Set yourself a goal to make one good connection. And then the next time, maybe one again. And then the time after that, okay, I feel like I'm going to get 2 today. No one is a natural networker. I mean, it's a couple of people that are extroverts and they can just talk to anyone, right? But most of us, it's kind of daunting. So when we're telling you to network, it doesn't mean you have to come away with 20 business cards. It just means make one good connection.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. I think for me, like, networking is all about connection. I don't consider myself a good networker, which is really funny. But I think that it's the ability to talk to someone, right? Because at the end of the day, you're sharing a story. You're learning something about someone that you haven't met before, right? And affinity organizations are really great about that because you have the chance to meet someone who has a different background than you, someone who you think might have the same background as you, but has a different life experience, right? When you go to a conference, when you come to events like these, you're taking the opportunity to learn a story about someone else, and you're making that connection, right? Where you're like, hey, like, I resonate with that, right? Hey, that's something that I've learned in my own classes, right? Hey, like, I've never thought of that question, and now I'm going to have the same answer, or maybe a different take on the answer, right? Challenge yourself with the why, right? It's something as mundane as briefing the taxi diagram, right? Why are we briefing this hotspot, right? It's talking about, you know, like, hey, like, why are we coming to these events, right? Why is it so important to talk in the industry about what we're seeing today, where we want to go from here, what we want to build on and strengthen? So that's what networking is, right? You start with that first hi, hello, and then you move on from there to become a crew.
And I think sometimes we think of networking as, to me, it kind of stressed me out a little bit too. It's a little overwhelming to think of networking, especially when, you know, if you were to do a Google image search of professional networking, it would look like a bunch of people standing around with little name tags and a cocktail and schmoozing. But that's not always how networking happens. And when I think back about how I got, anybody a music student here in the band, maybe? Yeah, no, a few? Okay, good, yeah. I was a high school band director before I became a pilot. And so I networked in a kind of unusual way to get from high school band director to airline pilot. And it was really through the experiences that I saw as opportunities and about meeting people in those opportunities. So my mentor teacher referred me to a job, and in my first year as a high school teacher, one of my students, the father of one of my students was a aircraft broker. And so he and I got to know each other very well, and he mentored me and referred me for a job to fly medical specimens between St. Louis and Cincinnati. And when I was eating lunch in Cincinnati, I met some pilots, and they referred me to a flight school that I could go build my hours at in Phoenix. And when I was building my hours in Phoenix, I met a mechanic and was pretty close with a mechanic who referred me to Compass Airlines. So sometimes it's not always in the organization career fair settings that you do networking. It's saying yes to opportunities as they come your way and seeing those as opportunities to meet people and to network that way too, maybe more organically.
I do want to point out, networking can seem scary, and a lot of people, like I think all of us at some point have mentioned, you know, we don't consider ourselves the best networker in the world. That's okay. You can always start with your CFI. I still talk to my CFIs. I have students who I still talk to. I'm writing 2 of them letters of recommendation right now. A speaker earlier pointed out, you never know who's going to be your boss. Like your CFI might be a chief pilot who, if he sees maybe your resume or he sees that you're wanting to apply, he can help put you in a situation that will set you up better. It doesn't have to be bigwigs, or you don't have to go straight to the chief pilot in the room. You can just start with anyone that you can just naturally have a conversation with, and be nice to your CFI and build a relationship with them as well.
A big thing that I like to tell people is also remember to follow up and stay memorable with people that you network and connect with. I think it's easy, especially in college, when you have like 60 little hours and like one cert, that you don't really want to reach out to maybe that big wig airline pilot and just bug them. But you know, if they connected with you and they gave you contact information, send them photos when you pass a stage check. Give them things to remember that they connected with you about, so that one day, you know, later on, they'll remember everything that you hit, all the goals you achieved, and they'll remember everything.
I would like to piggyback on that because I have made myself available for, you know, publicly on social media or, you know, in any event. I just literally meet anybody. I'll be like, do you know what? Do you want to grab my number? Just tell me where we met, what we talk, because there's probably going to be another 50 people behind you. But some of those people that I meet and I said, hey, here's my number. Out of 20 people, maybe 1 or 2 actually write down and say, Julieta, do you remember me? I just passed my check ride of, and I'm like, wonderful. Where did we meet again? But then I am, you know, then we schedule a phone call and be like, hey, what are your plans? What are you gonna do later? And I try to do it backward because I know, especially for younger people, I'm a millennial. I look like Gen Z, I know. I'm just kidding. But like, I know for you guys, I've seen it. I've heard you guys say, it's just so awkward sometimes for me to reach out. So I would like to, you know, how many of you listen to any podcast? Everybody, I assume. Everybody. You see, everybody's into podcasts. I listen to, I'm an extrovert, as Samantha said, so for us, it's just like a lot easier. We just are afraid to be awkward. That's the reality of it. But first, I understand the introverts that are really struggling with that. So maybe while you try to work on it, or if you know that it's important, maybe I listen to The Art of Charm, and The Art of Charm. It's a good podcast for coming with the specific tools and steps that you could follow along and utilize once you have the opportunity. It is just probably gonna be a different path for you than for extroverts that they just go to every party on campus. But then you know, you can not let that stop you. So those are actionable steps that you can take. So you can improve if you feel like you are your own obstacle in that regard.
I think the other thing with networking is that there's an element of mentorship, and I think a couple of us touched on that as well, right? Like, it's having that two-way connection, right? You reach out to someone who's higher than you in the industry. You're like, okay, like I'm only passing my like stage check 1 or something, right? But there is that like really beneficial relationship that you have with your peers, right? The people you study with every day. You talk about fronts, right? And then eventually, right, you're flying the airlines together. So building not only those vertical relationships, but the lateral ones as well, right? And then having those mentorships, right, where you're the mentee, right? And you're obviously getting some great advice from your mentor, but also they're getting to see the joy of you growing. And it's been really fascinating now, like as an instructor, right? I have my students and I want to celebrate their wins, right? Oh my God, you aced your steep turn, right? You actually didn't crater the landing this time, right? It's the little things, right? It's about celebrating the moments along the way. And I think it's really easy to forget that in the scope of a career that is very accelerated, right? The industry moves really quickly and you have this competitive desire to continue moving up, right? But it's not about like climbing that ladder, it's about the journey that it takes to get there. So having that mentorship relationship and working like both ways as a mentor and as a mentee is really important.
Sick. All right, Carissa, I think you were kind of talking about, the industry is very complicated, right? And you get into the airlines, you're like, oh my God, how do I bid for a schedule, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that a lot of pilots have in their toolbox are unions, and I was hoping that one of you would be able to speak to kind of the effect that unions have had in your working life and kind of the opportunities for growth within them as well.
I think as far as unions are concerned, with PSA, we're part of ALPA, which is the majority of airlines. I know United is part of ALPA as well. I consider unions to be an invaluable tool when it comes to your professional development. Ted, if you were in the presentation earlier, mentioned pilot peer support. Ted and I were on pilot peer support as well. I'm still an active member, which is an organization where if you want to phone a friend, talk about any like hard feelings or things like that, you can call them. But ALPA does more than just offer peer-to-peer support. ALPA offers legal services, so if you're in an aircraft accident or an investigation, they will represent you with your company. ALPA offers mentorship. ALPA offers everything from the hotel committee to working on ASAP programs. I think it's an invaluable tool in your toolbox as far as just networking is concerned, but also career advancement is concerned. And I think when a lot of you guys come to the regionals, and when a lot of you guys come to the airlines, get involved with the union. Don't be afraid to give back to all of the people that have sort of poured into you. So I think unions are an incredibly invaluable tool.
Unions are really cool. They help you out and they got your back. It's kind of nice coming from, I'm not going to put down any specific place, but as a student, you may not feel like you have a support, like somebody voicing, like having your back on things, right? But now at a company, you have a union support system and kind of have people helping guide you, make the right decisions, and have your back if something wrong happens. For me, myself, I think the union is great. There's a lot of opportunities for volunteering. They all have committees within. For Frontier, we have ALPA, but every airline has a bunch of committees from ALPA. So if you're somebody that likes numbers and safety-related things, you could get involved with union work on the data of some safety issues that might be happening at your company. Myself, I'm a part of the communications and peer-to-peer, so I kind of look at the beef that's happening between the company and union, kind of get all the facts and try and share with pilots out on the line what the facts really are so they don't get as emotional with certain things. Then I'm also involved with a critical incident response program at Frontier. So it's, the goal of that program is to have a resource to reach out to crews after a major or minor incident. It could be something as small as a disorderly passenger banging on the flight deck door during flight, and that can kind of startle you. Or it could be something serious like an engine fire or bomb threat, something like that. And first thing we do is we call the crews and say, how you doing? And we ask them what's going on, and we tell them we're not an investigating person. We don't need any numbers and facts. We just want to say, what did you feel? What did you smell? What did you see during everything? And then hopefully from there maybe engage something in their brain if they do need more mental health help and talk to a professional from there.
Yeah, United, I think we're very, very proud of our union. We're extremely proud of our union. They work really hard for us as pilots, from everything from finding the nicest hotels for us to stay at to making sure. Actually, they made sure that we all stayed on property during COVID. When our CEO was really bullish about making sure that, and going on the news saying we're going to be ready when COVID is over to meet the demand, our union said, wait, if you have a bunch of pilots laid off and nobody's qualified, you're not going to meet that demand. So let's sit down and let's have a conversation about how we can keep everybody on property. So bless the union. And United is huge on that. So especially in ALPA, there are other unions as well. It's not just ALPA. There's Teamsters as well. The nice thing about ALPA is that it's airline pilots Pilots Association. Teamsters is more originally from a truckers union. Still, it works, it's representation nonetheless, but it is nice to have ALPA where you could kind of have people working 24/7 or at least 5 days a week, working just for airline pilots. So that's a really beneficial thing for us.
I can speak for, I work for an airline that was non-unionized, and now I work for a unionized, and I had live events in both. And I can observe not only from my live event perspective, but also from the benefit that the airlines get with a union. And I can say that the difference is huge. Not only our union, as my partners, my fellow pilots have said, they share with ALPA, being supported, but it is also, the union is also a way for a way to get more personal with pilots, the other way around, right? Like if we make mistakes, because we all do, there's our consuls are ready in a more local way to just get us be more personable, to take care of problems, or that these things that need to be addressed for the pilot group. It's not only, it's so good for pilots, it's really good for the company in general, because we are able to follow with procedures better and talk about having hard conversations the other way around. We're slacking in this and that, and the union also helps us with that. So I think it has double benefit, and I've seen it work tremendously in the last couple of years that I've been at United.
Yeah, so keeping that discussion going about how important like having protection, like unions having your back. So we all encounter challenges we need to overcome, whether they're personal, such as family or relationship issues, or broader like industry changes. What was the most significant obstacle you faced while in this industry, and how did you address it?
Go back to COVID was kind of probably my biggest obstacle. Before the union decided to meet with the management and come up with an idea that would keep everybody on property, I did receive a letter that I was about to be furloughed. And in order to mitigate that, prior to receiving that letter, I kind of saw the writing on the wall with how COVID might end up. And so I contacted the local flight school and I said, hey, you looking for instructors? And they said, yeah, but it's a little bit backwards for you to go from airlines to instructing. And I was like, just give me 3 months and you'll see exactly why I'm doing this. And then the world shut down and they were getting like 10 applications a week from airline pilots that wanted to be instructors. So the thing that I'm proud of is that I kept my CFI current, my CFI license current, and found an opportunity to do something in aviation, even that wasn't airlines. So that's kind of how I navigated that challenging moment. And I still teach at the flight school too, because I'm having a good time teaching on the side.
So I will say I recognize that this is a very first world problem, but I think the biggest challenge for me was I've been at the airlines for about 2 years and 8 months, and the whole time for other than 4 months I was on reserve. And I was on ready reserve, which means that you have to be sitting at the airport with my company in 10 to 12-hour shifts, and you have to be able to get to the gate in 20 minutes. And so you're used to kind of seeing online that the airlines they keep moving, and they don't. There's these big up and down flows. I mean, he almost got furloughed and he was stressed out. That's a very real thing. In my case, there wasn't much attrition, so that means that there wasn't many pilots leaving and going on to the next stage of their career, but there also weren't many pilots coming in below me. So I was one of the very bottom pilots at the airlines before they stopped. And when that came into fruition, I'm sitting at the airport 19 days a month from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., and I'm getting used maybe 5-10 hours, which for correlation, I'm sitting at the airport 17 days a month doing nothing. And the biggest thing I can tell you guys, because you guys are all going to go through this at some point, is you're going to be sitting on reserve, whether it's short call or ready reserve at the airport, but find something to fulfill you during that time and find a hobby or something that you can bring. Or, one of my friends, she brings her whole art kit to reserve and she just paints all day. And It's what she likes to do, and it doesn't hurt anybody, but that's a challenge you guys are going to have to overcome. So make sure you have something ready to keep you guys from just being sitting there idle for years, in my case.
So I think for me, is anybody in here in 414 or coming up on 414 CFI? It's a lot of stuff, right? And they tell you like first day of class, don't expect to be done in a semester. So I took that as a personal challenge. I was like, all right, bet, for sure. So I cranked out 414 for about like a month and a half, and that was fall 2021. And if anyone's familiar with what happened in fall 2021, I was in a frat, DTD. And we lost a brother, and he lost his battle to mental health that fall. And that kind of made me snap in terms of I had to stop flying. Like at that point, flying was an everyday thing. I also was a ramp rat or line guy at UND, so it was just airplanes fly, go to class. And when that happened, I remember texting my boss at the line shack, and I was like, I'm not coming in, I don't know when I'll be back. And I needed a sec because I think it reminded me that I had invested so much time and energy to flying that I forgot about the things I love, the people I care about, and kind of trying to remember, like, if I hypothetically lost my medical or lost flying, am I still going to be Devin? Am I going to still be me? I didn't want to be so invested in flying that if I lost that dream, that like I would lose a part of myself. So definitely relied on a lot of my peers. One of my frat brothers in a quarter zip, I think is what he's wearing right there. He was there for me, and we all had each other's back, and just being around people that weren't in aviation. I know it's hard to do that when all these classes, you naturally get all aviation friends and stuff, but kind of just being around people that have nothing to do with flying, and I don't want to talk about it or fly or think about it. So it was awesome to get that break, and I came back and finished 414 that semester right before break ended. So I still met that goal, but I needed a month off.
One of my big challenges in aviation is something that I struggle with on a regular basis. I would probably venture to say almost on a daily basis, which is imposter syndrome, like Samantha spoke on. You know, this is a really competitive industry. Everyone's always striving to be the best. You want to fly the biggest airplane. You want to go the furthest. You want to, always be that next level and push yourself to the limits. And sometimes, that gets really hard and it gets really stressful to feel like you aren't as good as the next pilot next to you. I was really bad at steep turns, like always lost descent, like couldn't figure it out. Everybody else, all of my friends around me, they were progressing along in their program and they were moving on to different stage checks. And for me, it was like, this is something so silly. Why can't I get this? And that doesn't go away. That was 20 years ago. And here I am now saying I still struggle with that. I compare myself against peers in the industry. And really what's helpful is to surround yourself with a tribe that you respect and that respects you back. Because that's your tribe that's going to help you and pick you up, by the bootstraps and remind you that, no, you deserve a place to be here just like everybody else does, and let's help you get through this. This is what helped me get through it, so maybe try that. And if that didn't work, then maybe Samantha's got a role, or maybe Daniel's got a role. But imposter syndrome is a real thing in everybody's life, but especially so in a place like aviation where we're all, striving to be bigger and badder than the next person. So just make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who you look up to and who you would like to be. Because chances are, if you look up to them, they probably look up to you as well.
I think for me, my biggest challenge was in 2017, my mother, my father, and my grandfather were all diagnosed with cancer at the same time. And so I had to stop flying. I had to go home, help take care of my family. And so we ran out of money and I just couldn't afford it. How many of us know that flying is expensive, right? It's not, it's not cheap to do this. When you have 3 people in your immediate circle on chemo, it's difficult. And so how I overcame that challenge, especially with the fact that I worked at the dispatch desk at Embry-Riddle, so every day I was checking in students to go do the thing that I wasn't doing. I didn't fly for a year and 6 months. How I overcame that challenge, you guys aren't gonna believe it, but networking. I networked. I went to the dean of flights, the dean of the flight school at Embry-Riddle, and I sat in his office and I said, I have no idea how I'm gonna pay for my training. I have no idea what I'm going to do. And he gave me $10,000 and said, go finish the rest of your ratings. And so I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for that. And so when I say networking is an invaluable tool, I am not saying this because I don't have experience with that. These affinity organizations, the ones in the back, they're your representatives. They have access to finances. They have access to funds and to help that you may not have access to. And so when you don't know what to do or you find yourself in a pickle, I think it's incredibly important to lean on the people that are in your circle. And don't be afraid to ask for help. I think Victor mentioned this earlier. Don't be afraid to ask for help from other people. I think as pilots, type A, we get a little when it comes to asking for help. But I needed help. I didn't know what to do. I had 3 people in my family on chemo, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to figure this out. And so, yeah.
Little click there. I think you guys kind of hit it right on the head, right? Everyone's kind of a team here, and kind of one of the things that we've seen recently has been this great shift towards being more positive about everyone's identities. And more recently, we've kind of struggled a little bit with, hey, how are we going to continue this conversation of respecting other people's identities and seeing that representation? So I wanted to ask you guys kind of, hey, how are we going to go about talking about those culture issues that we still have on the flight deck and within the industry as we kind of shift in these political times?
I mean, every pilot goes through recurrent, and the purpose of recurrent is to sharpen your skills, but also to learn something new. So if you apply what you're already doing in your profession, it's an easy translation into a personal relationship with somebody else. You know, you're stuck up, you know, at 30-something thousand feet, locked behind a steel door. Use that opportunity to get to know something new about somebody that you didn't know. You know, learn a new culture. Been to any good restaurants lately? Seen any good movies? Reading a good book? You know, there's a lot that can be learned over sharing a meal and just having, you know, simple small talk. We all have a story. We all have struggles. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, your identity, or anything else. We all have some kind of background. And, you know, just taking a little bit of time to get to understand how someone became the way that they are. You know, it goes a long way, especially in a crew resource environment where safety is paramount. You know, we only know what we know, and that's, for some of you, that might be a lot. For me, not so much. And so finding opportunities to connect with people who are not like you is an invaluable tool. It makes you stronger. It makes us safer, and it makes life a lot more fun. You know, I've got some great restaurants in my neighborhood that I like to go to, but, you know, every now and then something new is different, you know? Chicken nuggets and french fries are only good once in a while. You know, maybe you know a good pizza spot. You know, flying around to the same airports when I was doing a lot of GA flying, it was a great time, but when I found opportunities to go to different FBOs because there was other places on the field to have fun with, you know, it just made flying more interesting, and I know I'm a better person because of all the different backgrounds that I know.
So no matter what the climate is, people's identities don't go away, right? So just whether it's correct or on board to talk about someone's differences, it doesn't mean that they're not different. And that's where the empathy piece comes in. You know, it's meeting people where they are. You may have differences with someone, but I'm pretty sure that if you get to talk to them for a while, you're going to find something that's similar. All of you are in the same program right now, right? But you may have many, many differences. And that's where going into those affinity groups, and if you don't identify, still joining them so that you get to see what perspective people have. And again, goes back to CRM. It's a safer flight deck if you're able to talk to everyone and know how to approach topics that you may not be familiar with, or you think that might be, I don't like to use the word triggering, but things that are more sensitive for people. If you have someone that's in a group and you know how they like to be addressed, then you're going to feel more comfortable when you're in that situation with someone that has a completely different background to you. So I would say the work doesn't change. It's just how we view it and how we go about it.
This is a very, this question touches my heart because I feel like I moved to the United States when, like about 13 years ago. And for the longest time, I felt very isolated. And I have gone through phases where I have felt like, you know, I have had different feelings about how I get accepted into the aviation community. But I have through my path, I have learned that people don't really get to know you or appreciate you or accept you if you are out of touch with them, meaning that if you yourself don't allow to ask questions to the other person and let them speak and let them be vulnerable with you, then they're not gonna meet you at the same spot. And it's been hard because for a moment, I thought that it was other people not trying to accept me in any way a long time ago. But at the same time, I was like, well, sometimes I just, we don't have that opportunity to allow the other person to be vulnerable. And it's very difficult to speak about these things nowadays. But you're not gonna gain somebody's heart if you see them different, if you see them as the enemy, or if you are biased. Even if you meet the person that you think, oh, that person looks like the Grinch. No, just kidding. But like seriously, if you think that that person, it's intimidating, or that person looks like they look at me different. But if you start asking questions, even if there are things about you don't know or don't agree with per se, and you let them talk, just let the other person say what they want to say. And, of course, there's boundaries of respect and things like that. I don't want you to allow to put yourself so others can walk all over you. No, that's not about it. But if you just let the other person just talk and talk about their families or their hobbies or why they think in a certain way, then you will learn things that you don't think that you could learn. And if the other person says, oh, look at this Colombian, is it with a U or a O? So then they become themselves vulnerable. And then you have your chance to be like, you know what? It was kind of weird. I didn't know how to pronounce dinosaurs. I thought it was dinosaurs. And things like that. And so you gain the heart of the other person in a different way. But if we shut down ourselves and keep ourselves just for us, then you are never gonna make that bridge. Just build that bridge and allow the other person to maybe meet you at one step. And then you take 2 steps and then you bring them and you meet at the middle. And it took me so long to understand that. You have no idea. But I think we are in a perfect opportunity where we need to take a deep breath and understand that the other person, even if they look like or if they speak about it openly, they are not our enemy. They are not. And we can't live in a society where we let the noise from outside cut that relationship that we can build with the other person that is just 2 feet from you in the flight deck. And I have some of my best friends and even my husband. If we were met in a different environment, we would not speak to each other because we have very different views in many things. Yet we're married. We've been together 10 years. You wouldn't think that you could marry a person that differs in certain ideas from you. Doesn't that look impossible? You will think that you will share a life with a person that you align in absolutely everything. So in just that manner, your colleagues are gonna differ from you. But it's in your level that you use your emotional intelligence to level to others, then you're gonna receive the same way. So that has worked for me.
I think how we keep the conversation on diversity going is we continue to show up. And we continue to show up as our authentic selves. For example, my hair is such a conversation starter in the flight deck. Please don't, Devin just asked, can I touch it? For example, I do cadet interviews, and a cadet came up to me and was like, hey, do they issue you a special headset? And I was like, what? I was very confused. I know what he was talking about. And he was like, for your hair, like, how do you get a seal around your... So, you know, when you continue to show up as your authentic self, when you don't conform to what you think that this industry is looking for, but you stay true to who you are, it starts a conversation. I can't tell you how many times I've flown with a captain. They've been like, is that your real hair? And it's something so small, but it starts a conversation. And one captain was like, you know, my son, he was white, and he goes, my son has a black girlfriend, and she wears her hair like this, or she does that. And he was just curious. He genuinely wanted to know. And if I wanted to have my guard up, I could be offensive, and I could say, oh, why is he asking me these questions? But in reality, a lot of times, I think when we sit down and we talk with each other, we realize we're a lot more alike than we are different. And I think how we keep the conversation going is we show up, but how we maintain an open heart and open mind for these conversations, we allow our own biases to be challenged. We have to allow our own perceptions and our own prejudices to be challenged as well. When you meet somebody, you don't want to say, oh, you're not like other XYZ demographic. You say to yourself, okay, maybe my idea or perception of this entire demographic should be challenged. It should be different. So don't be afraid to show up as yourself, but also don't be afraid to have your own views and your own biases challenged as well. I think that's how we keep the conversation going.
How many of you have had like a briefing where you say something, your CFI says something else, and then you fact check them and they're wrong? All right, we got to study some more, guys. But like, right, like there's moments, right, where you as a student challenge your CFI. There's moments where you as a CFI challenge a student, right? And a good CFI is the one that is going to admit, right, hey, like, I'm not sure. Let's look in the PHAC. Hey, right, maybe I got that wrong. Let's look it up together, right? Every day is an opportunity to learn, right? And this is what we're saying here, right? It feels like, you know, the words diversity, equity, and inclusion are very different than what we're doing in the deck, right? But at the end of the day, you're working with your team, right? It's that career resource management. And it was really interesting. 2 years ago, I had a conversation with the Delta pilot, and he was saying that he worked with their team on diversity, equity, inclusion. And they had renamed their team because it wasn't the direction that, you know, they wanted to brand, or that people weren't receiving it well, right? And it is a buzzword, right? We're transitioning away from that, but we aren't shying away from the challenges that still face us in society, right? And so knowing what you're looking for, right? It's all about who you're getting to know, right? It's about what you bring to the table, right? You've got external CFIs who come in, right? I went as an external CFI to school that I instruct at now, right? I get challenged by the CFIs there. I challenge the CFIs there to grow, right? We build as a community upon each other, right? And that's really where that equity comes from. The reason it says equity instead of equality in there is because equality is everyone is going to see over, is getting like the same like view looking over a fence, right? And if you're shorter, you're gonna have a harder time looking at who's used to booster seat, right? But equity is making sure you're stacking enough boxes that that person can see over the fence, right? One person might not need any boxes, right? That's privilege. One person might need 1 or 2 boxes, or even 3, right, in order to see it. And it doesn't mean that they're any less qualified to see over the fence, but it means that there's certain hurdles in the way that they're gonna face before they can get there, right? Last year, Teresa Claiborne came and she was talking about her experiences as a pilot. And I remember she shared once a story that she was a little bit shorter than other, like, you know, pilots in the industry, right? And she's got to face that challenge, right? And she overcame that. She became such an inspiration for all of us, right? And that's the goal, is that we're gonna set those inspirational challenges for one another, right? Every day you come in, you look at someone else and you're like, hey, like, we're not the same. I actually came from a background outside of aviation, so I studied neuroscience and chemistry. And as humans, right, in this room, we all have something the same, right? We're all in aviation, or we're all interested in aviation, or we know someone in aviation, right? When you look at each other, you might think, hey, we might not have the same thing, but we're all human, right? And at the base level, it was really interesting, like when I was taking chemistry courses, they were like, oh, genetically, you're like 97% the same genetically as a banana. Like, so you really don't have to stretch too far to find a commonality, right? So thinking about it, right, don't be afraid to challenge yourself with that, right? I think one thing that as a person of color or as a woman of color, it's really difficult, is that you're your biggest champion because you have to be. At the end of the day, there's no one who's going to support you like yourself. You have amazing friends, you have amazing family, you have amazing mentors and mentees who are going to uplift you and hold you through that and encourage you when you have to find the strength to pick yourself up again, right? But it's a challenge. And I read this book by Ta-Nehisi Coates. It's called Between the World and Me years ago. And one of the things that he wrote in there about his experience about growing up Black in America was that you have to be twice as good in order to be considered half as much. And that's a really, really difficult message to understand as someone who comes from a different background, right? But every day you set yourself up for the challenge, right? You go in, you brief yourself, you look at the weather, and you go out there and you fly that plane, right? And that's what we're trying to do every day.
Since you brought up the kind of idea of DEI, and I think it's important to just get across the board, set the record straight essentially of what DEI is and is not, so that we can help to promote what it is and dispute what it's not. It's been kind of distorted recently to mean a reduction of the standards so that people that look like us or are like us can get in. And that's not what it is. DEI just allows people the chance to take the test. Every one of us can hold our altitude within 100 feet. Every one of us can hold our airspeed within 10 knots. Every one of us had to land on the spot within 100 feet. That's why we're here. It's not because of what we look like or who we are. And so just want to make sure that, and it's up to you. It's your obligation as future students to dispute the distortions that are out there right now, and make sure that we talk about it. If we talk about it as DEI, or if it's some other acronym we come up with in the future, which we might need now, like you were saying, it's still important to talk about it. The message is still important because we need representation. No matter who's in charge in our government, whatever, we still need the representation because it contributes to safety, as we all know.
So me personally, I look at work and I try and make it like a challenge. Does anyone have CFIs that maybe like outside of flying, like you're like, I would never be your friend? I was like, right? So that's kind of what happens when you're an airline pilot too. Crazy, right? Like one of my favorite captains is a 60-year-old guy with a ranch and an excavator, I think, some sort of blue collar cool thing. And I was like, I don't even know how to fix my tire on a car. I have AAA. But we're like really good friends now through work, and I always think of it as like I'm kind of like an undercover spy about, breaking the ice on maybe some stereotypes he may have. Like we've had some disagreements about things, but we've connected enough through 3-4 days. It's crazy how when you fly, I think it's so therapeutic in a way because you're sitting next to somebody looking straight ahead. You reveal a lot about yourself inadvertently. So you gain a lot of trust and camaraderie in a couple days. But I try and think like, maybe I can change the way he looks at other people that may look like me. And if it wasn't for this job or career, I would never see this dude at a ranch. I wear too much Lululemon to be anywhere near a ranch. So it's like a really cool opportunity with this job. And like they were saying earlier, nip stuff in the bud. Like I've gotten comments like, yeah, you'll get to XYZ airline because of, your skin, like your color. And then I always look at them. One of my favorite responses is, let's go resume for resume. You want to see it? Like, let's take the numbers out of it. I bet mine looks pretty decent compared to you. And trying to get that stereotype gone,
I guess it's kind of touching the topic, but like one thing I want to throw out there too is you do have to prove yourself. Like you prove yourself through going through your certificates and whatnot. But as you kind of build your time in the airplane, you always trust but verify what they're going through. But then on top of that, you're going to start to build your own technique. And as long as it's safe and fine and goes within the company's guidelines, your technique is your technique. So when you're flying with someone and they're like, let's say it's a captain, I was doing this a couple weeks ago, and I called for flaps and he was like, I want to wait. But it was my turn to fly. And so, we come to a point where you have to stick to, okay, well, I'm flying, it's safe as long as it's okay. And you don't have to be hard about it and kind of fight them, but when you get on the ground, you have to stick to your gut, and you do have to advocate and stand up for yourself. And so even if it's not something they necessarily agree with, by showing that your decision-making is thorough and safe and it works just as fine, that can also be a subtle way of proving yourself to them through the actions and the outcome of whatever you decide and how you call it.
Awesome. So we just kind of spent that time talking about underrepresented groups. And an underrepresented group on stage right now is students here at UND. So we'd like to open it up to all of you to ask any questions that you might have. Don't all stand up at once.
Hello. So we just talked about like diversity and also interacting with people different than us. I had a question specifically for those that have been in and around the aviation and aerospace industry for longer, and I wanted to ask if you have felt or seen the kind of culture change over the years, and then how you feel like that will change in the future.
So I started flying when I was in high school, so that was 10 years ago. I know I look younger, just kidding. But I'm with Julieta for Gen Z. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I started flying 10 years ago, and I remember when my high school had a flight program. When we all had to try out for the flight program, we had to audition, sort of, which was interview, but it felt like an audition. We had to take an exam. We had to do a lot of things. And I remember how happy I was when I got into the flight program. And I looked to my right, and my friend who was a white man, he said to me when I was 16 years old, "Oh, you got in because you're black." And I was like, "What?" He said, "Yeah, it's because they have to have diversity. You got in because you're black, not because you're smart." That comment followed me for at least 7 years after that. I mentioned those affinity groups earlier. It took OBAP, it took people in WAI, it took people like that when I heard comments in passing on, because I did my training on the Air Force Base, and so one time I caught them talking and they were like, "Women belong in the kitchen. I don't know why there's so many women trying to fly now." That was in 2015. In 2025, those comments would never happen out loud. Those comments would never fly in that way, in my opinion, no pun intended. I think the culture has shifted. I think the culture has changed as to where it's a lot more inviting than it used to be. And I know for some of you guys, you may be thinking, "No, I still have a hard time." You probably still have a hard time, but I'm sure so many people in this room who have been flying 10 plus years would say, no, the culture has shifted, it has changed. And I want to point something out. I read a lot of Bell Hooks. She's one of my favorite authors. And I'll never forget when she did an interview and she said the problem with racism is not that white people believe black people are inferior. The problem with racism is that black people believe it. And so comments like that put you down, that degrade your character, people can say what they want, right? You don't have to believe it. You don't have to give credence to the negative thoughts. You don't have to give credence to people speaking down, and you don't have to believe it. If no one in this room has ever told you, you belong here. You belong in that flight deck. You belong in that seat. And so I think as the industry has changed, I think we have an opportunity and a platform with events like this to be a lot more vocal. I've seen OBAP grow in so many ways for 10 years. I've seen new organizations pop up. It feels like there's a new organization every day that is supporting some affinity group or some underrepresented culture. So keep the conversation going, keep the people talking. But I think the way that it's changed is that it's become a lot more palatable to speak up for yourself and say, no, I belong here, and for you to believe it.
Yeah, we've been on kind of, I feel like, a little bit of a victory lap in the last few years in terms of all that. I mean, United Airlines is you book a ticket and you can select a gender that more closely matches your gender, even undisclosed or unspecified. You can select those things. That's wonderful. We just got new uniforms at United, and there wasn't a men's uniform and a women's uniform. There was a pilot A and a pilot B uniform, and you could choose the selections that felt that you were your authentic self. So we have come a long way. The challenge for you all is going to be how do we, and for the future, is how do we start a conversation again about this very important stuff with a lot of people that may not want to listen to it. And I think our allies, those of you that are not a part of any of the affinity organizations or not a member of the minority, getting involved in those, as many of us have said, you don't need to be black to join OBAP. The treasurer I just learned of LTA, Latino Pilot Association, he's white, but he believes in the mission. So you don't need to be a part of that, but we do need you as allies, because often allies have an immense amount of power to help this mission go forward. So we've come a long way. We still have farther to go, of course, and we all are responsible, those in minorities and not in minorities, to keep our foot on the gas pedal.
Looking last night just about some numbers, and right now commercial pilots are 8% women. I think that your freshman class was 25% women right now, so that's huge. That just shows you the progress that's being made. So even within your classes right now, progress from where we're at currently.
I think I've had some times, not going to say at work or just in this recent climate, that like certain terms are starting to be used almost like in a slur way. And you say DEI hire or woke, certain things like that, you know, it's kind of degrading to it, and it's almost in a way normalizing and giving people a way of deniability that they have these racist or sexist undertones in what they're talking about. And it's important to say, what do you mean by that? Now, I've said it to some captains or other coworkers if they're tearing down my allies that are women pilots that identify as women, like, what do you mean by that? And then they kind of go through what they said undercover and hiding, and I'm like, that just sounds kind of sexist, right? And then you kind of see them kind of go, yeah. And then hopefully they learn from it. Like, I'm not trying to attack them in any way when I say that, but I'm like, hear yourself. Like, you hid everything you just felt with this term, but this is what you truly mean. There's a term for how you feel, and that's not cool.
As we see the DEI programs and the different affinity groups potentially have less support, are there any specific actionable things besides being involved as an ally that people could do to help?
Yeah, I think what he just said down at the end is a really great start, is to call things out. You know, and a great way for me personally when I hear something that I'm like, what did you just say? Is literally just that. Help me understand. You know, help me understand what you meant by that. It's a great way to peel back the onion and for people to maybe walk themselves down the path that we're trying to get them to see. That's a great way. And you know, we talk a lot about allies. Thank you, Dan, for bringing up a good point. You know, allies really hold the keys to the kingdom here. You know, and if you aren't part of an organization, good for you. That's great. Be thankful that you don't have to be part of an organization, and use that as an opportunity to pull people up that didn't have that same opportunity like you did. But really just asking questions on behalf of whomever you feel, you know, compelled to do so. My personal favorite way, like I said, to do so is to say, you know, help me understand how that goes. But you can find your own phrase of saying that, and sometimes it's just, you know, a very intentional look with a raised eyebrow will get you pretty far.
I want to believe that most of you guys, you are here to go through a professional degree to become a pilot, most likely. So I'm not in doubt that most of you understand how the airlines hire. But I have encountered, nevertheless, people that are in the industry and they don't understand how the airlines hire. So just piggyback on what you guys said, it's just like sometimes people just don't, they actually think that I just check the 2 boxes, Latina woman, and they're like, here you go, your license. But it's mostly the public. I want to say, like, it's mostly people who aren't in the aviation industry. If you notice, at least like I see it on social media, people genuinely believe that we get away with less. So I think it's just a matter of understanding what the other people are coming from, and then just say, you know, like it's not that. I think I happened to meet one time when I was in my last flight at SkyWest, just handing the airplane to the next person. I encountered a captain that I had just talked about how many hours I had. And he's like, what you mean is your last flight? I was like, because I'm going to United. And his response was like, already? And I was like, yes, when you're a volunteer for 6 nonprofit organizations, when you hold a seat at LPA and you volunteer 1 or 2 events a month, people know you, you pass check rides, yes, you get there Like, so it's just people who probably don't understand or don't have in their mind that. So don't let that discourage you. Just maybe try to explain, especially to non-pilot people, how the airlines work. Because they imagine that they just give us this $30 million airplane, be like, you look like a woman, here you go. So it's just like genuinely, listening to the other person.
I had a really sweet moment on a couple days ago before I came out here. It was the last day before work, and it was a really bad, long day at work. I was completely over it. Like, I was like, I just want to go home, play Xbox 2K, and play video games all night long, get over my bad day. But the moment I walk through the flight deck door and I'm out in the public, I try and remind myself, like, I'm not just representing myself, I'm representing people that look like me, the company, whatever. So I kind of put the straight face back on, smile, and nod, and act like nothing happened. That's the cool part about the job. Once you're done flying, it's over. But I did my walk around. I'm about to head to Grand Forks in like 10 hours. I'm like super excited. And I come out the door, and then there's an older black lady standing there, and she gets my attention, and she goes, "Hey, sir." And I was like, "Sir, I'm 26, but okay." I was like, "Yes, ma'am." And she was like, "Can I get a picture of you?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "With you?" And she was like, "No, can you just stand there in your uniform and smile?" And I was like, took the picture, and I was like, I think she could tell I was gonna say, like, "Why do you need that?" And I didn't even say no, which is kind of weird. I should have. But she was like, "Well, I have a grandson that, I take pictures of any like person that kind of looks like him, or I think is gonna look like him, so that I can show him one day he can do anything." And it kind of made me just stop, and I was like, wow, like, right before the timing of coming to this, I was like, I really needed that reminder. So it's like, no matter what you're doing, it's funny how when you go to the airport, you put on the uniform, you see people glance and notice you and stuff, but it really does have an effect on, the future and young people that one day will see you and they'll go, maybe I could do that one day. And you got to keep that up, even if I'm not wearing any pins from any of the minority organizations or anything that's quite identifiable what I am. There is somebody that sees who I am.
Yeah, there's a lot. We had a really good conversation, Samantha, and then Ava and I earlier about framing. And framing matters, right? That's why certain words matter. That's why how we talk about it and understand different terminology matters, right? That's why we have call-outs in the plane, right? Or radio phraseology. But it matters when it comes to representation. It matters about who you see in the airplane. The first time that I went to my flight training, I boarded my flight. I moved from Chicago to Arizona for training. And I went out there. It was like before I went, I like put all my affairs in order. My friends are like, "It's like you're dying or something." Like, and I was like, "You might not hear from me for 2 years. Like, who knows?" But I went and I moved out there. And as I was deplaning, the pilot came out to like wave goodbye. And it was a woman pilot. And I had never had a woman pilot on my flight before. And I thought, wow, like this is so incredible. Like, and I talked to her, I took a picture with her. I didn't get her number, so I actually never sent her the picture. But it was really great because, in that moment I was like, this is who I want to be, right? I'm moving across the country to do that, and this is where I'm gonna be in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? So having that framing, having people who use the words that matter, who speak up, right? Who are really great allies and invest in your friends and your community and in organizations like this, right? UND is organizing to sponsor events like this. You've got really great funds that are putting on events like this. It's the time and commitment that matters, right? The student leaders who spend all their time to put this together, to bring us in, to have really great moderators who are putting together questions, right, to challenge us and to challenge our way of thinking and help us grow, right? It's a really good thing to have that framework and to keep going from there.
I'll make it quick, but I just thought about this based on what they were saying. Like, you will kind of have moments where, like, someone will look at you funny or they'll say something. I've had people in first class come up to the flight attendant and be like, "Can she be in there? Like, is this safe? Are we gonna get there?" And flight attendants always like scurry up and tell me, can we kind of laugh about it? But like, that's exactly what you have to do, is you have to laugh at it, because at the end of the day, it's just ignorance. And that's the stress that everyone is making up here, is it's kind of your job to help people understand that it's ignorance. And if they know and then they're still choosing to do it anyways, well, that's just a special kind of person. So just let it slide off your back.
Unfortunately, that's kind of the thing that we have time for today. I know I use when I swear, but that's everything that we have time for today. If you could give a round of applause to our wonderful panelists.
All right, we want to thank you all for your time and support of this year's event. I hope you have all found today as inspirational and moving as I did. Thank you once again to our speakers today for sharing their stories. This event would not have been possible without you. And thank you to all who helped plan this event, as something of this nature takes a village. We appreciate you all and your continued support of our event. Thank you.